So like when did this domain flipping started?
So I was doing this services thing, like, designing website for customers. So we used to buy domains for them, doing website designing for them, hosting it for them, renewing it for them. And by 2014, I believe I was not very keen on running this services thing anymore. So I started downsizing my client base. Whatever client we had, we used to renew and do the work for them. But I don't think we took any more clients. And also I started downsizing my team. But many times what happened was some of these domains I bought for my own use, and I started getting inquiries for them. Okay. And I'll make a clarification down the road in this, when we are talking about domains, what is the difference between domain investment and domain squatting? Because people mistake this terms. Okay. So when I say domain investing, it is something quite different than.
You just want to hold it for a long time.
Not necessarily long time. But when I say that I invest into domain names, people will think that the names like Facebook or Google's or Tata or something like that. But I don't touch that kind of names at all. I go with the generic names. I'll give an example down the road. But I go with the generic names which can be used. These are called empty vessels. It can be used for multiple businesses, multiple folks. Right? Okay. Not for a single. So I don't buy a domain name thinking this is the company and this is going to use it for that purpose. Okay. And there is a difference between domain investment and domain squatting. Domain squatting is when you see some keyword or a company name getting famous, and then you acquire it in certain extensions, or for example, Facebook, social something post or something.com, right? So I don't do that kind of investment.
Okay.
So one of the domain I have is social.do and then socialmedia.is.
Okay.
Right? So any agency which wants to run a social media agency, right? They can run their own name. No doubt about it. They can brand themselves whatever they want. And they can also own that word, single word, socialmedia.is. Right?
Yeah.
So it makes a different impact on your target audience. Right? So I go with the common generic words which define the industry itself.
Okay.
Like I have a domain called crm.do, coding.do. Right? So you can call yourself Whitehead Juniors. And then you spread marketing, inject people with your marketing that yes, what does Whitehead Junior does, right? Coding for kids. Or you can have a domain name called coding.do. You need not even explain to anyone. If someone says www.coding.do, they know what it is about.
Yeah.
And you're not going to forget it. So I do that.
Okay. So, how many domains you own at this point?
I believe 8,500 plus domain names.
8,500?
Yes.
Like you bought all of them by yourself, or is there any automation process for this?
Yeah, we'll talk about that. So see, I started investing in domain names in 2015 onwards. So at that time we stopped doing this client work. So, but I was still buying some domains for my own use. And then I started getting some inquiries for some of these names. Okay, and at that time I was aware there is a something called domain investing. Being early in the trend, right? I know one of my relatives told to me way back in before .com boom that why don't you buy .coms? It's 99 or 2000 I'm talking about.
That's so early.
So early, right? And so see,
people wouldn't even know what domains are.
What domains are. So and I didn't start. I started buying .coms just last an year or half back. Okay. So 2014-15 I started buying some domain names, mostly .ins, because it was cheap. Right? So you could get a domain for pretty cheap price, and the renewal was also cheap. So I started buying for my own use, and then people started reaching out for some of these names and offering 30K, 40K for these names. I was thinking man, we are doing website designing, we are making so much efforts. And people just they even not feel comfortable paying 10K, 15K for the work.
The whole thing.
Website we are delivering, including content, design, everything all inclusive, hosting. And they don't feel like paying that much. And here these guys are ready to pay me that much money for a domain name. And I have only spent 500 rupees, not even 500, 100 or 200 rupees to buy that name. So I was thinking, and I knew about domain investment, but I didn't, and at the time I was on the other, I was thinking, why the hell, so whenever I used to search for some domain name, it was not available. I was thinking, why the hell this guy has bought this name and kept with him, he's not using it, a waste of time, energy, resources, right? I was not aware. of the domain investment. I was aware, but I was feeling like, why the hell this guy has bought it if he's not going to use it? At that time, it was more of mindset that, you only buy something when you use it.
Yeah.
Right? So I have bought for my own use, started getting some inquiry, sold few names, and I say, okay, this makes sense. Why should I waste my time in doing this website designing work when I can invest into domain names and pay them for good money? Right? So, and then I started buying names. I started buying and maxing out my credit cards, right? And not in the first year. First year I invested into whatever I was making from the services, I invested that money into buying domain names. But then the law of averages came up, right? The sales were not happening as fast as I was buying the domain names. Right? So I invested some money, but I was not able to recover that money back. Next year, the renewals come in. And you are not making enough money, you are not making enough sales. And the problem was that I bought a lot of .ins, .ins or .co.ins, thinking that India will grow, and the sales were not coming. So I started pumping more money into that. Now, once you started riding the tiger, you cannot get off that tiger, right? So 3-4 years it continued like that. Because again, being early in the market, there was one problem, and then focusing wrong niche. In India, people don't want to pay for the domain name. That was a mistake I did. So, but
like how do you do this? You just sit there and then you just think about some names. Okay, this one.
That is one way. So see, in domain name, one is keyword names, where you identify keyword which are famous in certain industry. For example, I tell you one name, aim.in.
Okay.
What comes to your mind?
Some teaching,
right? Yeah. Aim. What is your aim in life? We ask people, right?
Yeah.
So any edtech company, if you see their advertisement with aim, www.aim.in, right? You understand what this company is about. Other use could be a gaming company.
Yeah.
Aim, right? If you designing any equipment or games or something like this, or tools for gamers, it's a pretty good name, right? Like I have early.in, right? Let's take an example, blinkit.in. Does it make any sense? Yes, in a way it makes sense. But if it was named as early, .in, right? So you will understand, so these are the keyword domain names, right? Where the keyword makes sense. And then there are brandable names. For example, let's take example of Swiggy. What does Swiggy means? It doesn't mean on its own. But it has now acquired a meaning because they started marketing and invest hell lot of money on marketing themselves. So now you know what Swiggy is about, right? But it doesn't mean on its own. So this is the brandable names. Okay. So keyword names and brandable names. So initially, I never went for the brandable names because it didn't make sense much to me. Keyword name, I can always use it for my own purpose, right? I can build some simple portal on that and use it. Brandable names, yes. Even though if you are going for a single product and you can make it a whole startup out of it, it makes sense. Right?
Okay.
So when I buy domain names, I don't sit and try to invent new names. Okay, I make a list of existing industry and what these names could be used for, and I keep a track of which names out of this list are dropping off. So there is a website called expired domains, expireddomains.net. So where you get a list of all these expiring domain names. So someone must have registered this name. They didn't, they felt that they are no longer in need of their domain name, and they are not going to renew it. Right? So they drop this name. They don't pay for the renewals. So I go through this list every day, select which names make sense, and then once it drops, I register them.
Okay. Like you do all this process manually, or is there any automation process?
I have semi-automated now. Things.
Okay.
So even going through the list is manual. I have to go through the list, but from that I select some names, and then I have built some scripts where I put these names, and then my script try to register them as soon as they fall off. So it's called drop catching basically.
Okay.
So there is a lot of competition for famous extensions like .coms, .nets. It's not easy to drop catch them because a lot of big companies are doing that. So I'm focusing on smaller unknown, for example, a lot of these country extensions are there, where the competition is not that high.
Have you got into ENS?
No, I don't believe in that.
Okay.
So, yes. So I run some scripts which drop catch these names, and I mostly go with expired domains. I don't try to invent new names.
Okay.
Yes.
So basically that's how you just go through that site and then select what you wanted and then just...
Yes.
And you did that like 8,500 times over and over and over again.
Yes.